where is the fit for those who are just coming to faith, and then, of course, those who are lifted up as leaders or pastors, if you will? If you were to say, how are these to work together? What's the role in each one? Why don't you give us kind of your thoughts and how it comes out of Scripture?
You know, we learn from the Scriptures that Jesus, as early as possible when the disciples were recruited, or let's say they come to church in our context, he engaged them early enough to show them that they are part of the team. He did not wait for a long season for them to become matured or learn all the other things that we think we need to learn. We need to learn, not minimizing that. But I think it's on-the-job training for Christians. I think we need to really realize that most people attend church, they go to church, but they're not engaged in daily missional life journey. We kind of think that when we talk about missional life, we think it's Sundays, or we think of people that go overseas. I think we have really failed in a way as a church to show that we just don't call missionaries who go overseas, but as a missionary, I go to work, Bob. I work as a mechanic in a car. You know, what an opportunity as a mechanic that I would have to engage my conversations with the people as they come, or even trying to be nice to my colleagues, or whatever it may be. That is my mission field. We think mission field is a foreign field. Somebody goes to Africa, you're a real missionary. And I know the feeling, we like that, but I'm just remembering the text. We need to go back to the Bible. How did Jesus train his people? And I think that's where the question that we need to really work on is to help our people understand that he calls us to be part of the team from the very beginning.
Yeah, I think when you say that, I often think of that adage. I think it was Brian Sanders who said it, right? I'd rather have a church of 100 active people than 1,000 people who sit in a pew, right? And I think that's always been the quandary, right? How do you get past the 80-20 rule?
Yes.
How do we get to the point where people are really engaged in the mission every day and in every way? So from the Bible, I mean, there's a lot of great stories of Jesus sending people out. What's one of your favorites as it relates to this idea?
You know, everybody knows this story, okay? I'm sure everyone that is listening from our Sunday schools, we have learned that feeding the 5,000, a great story. Often enough, we focus there on the miracle that happens. And that's what we focus on, the miracle, and we'd like to focus on the miracle but before the miracle happens, there's something else that happens, and that's the focus I'm just saying. And I'll just kind of look at that text, and when these people come, the crowd is there, and Jesus looks at this crowd, Matthew chapter 14, and the disciples come to him and they said, this is a remote place, it's already getting late, send the crowds away. Hear that word again, send the people with the problems away. Send people away because we cannot handle them. And the response of Jesus is, this is the cursor for us to realize he focused on not the miracle. You know what he says there? This isn't necessary. Don't send away people. And the next word he says, you feed them. You know, Bob, I thought about that so long. You feed them. He's saying when you see a problem in your community, when you see a problem near your church, when you see an issue in your area, when you see a big issue at the workplace, you address them. You solve them. And obviously they cannot feed the 5,000. He knows that. And the scriptures remind us, he knows those things. But he wants to give them a challenge saying that, don't look at a problem and turn away. That's what they did. They looked at this big issue and they said, you know what, we cannot handle this. Let's send them away. The easiest things for us to do as a church is to say, we can't do that. It's somebody else will take care of it or send them away. And Jesus says, no, you solve the problem. in knowing that He will be in this problem. He will supply the resources for us. He knows all that. He will do that. And later on you can see that in the text. But He says, you solved it. He was just trying to see whether they're going to engage. And I believe that when we see an issue, a problem, we need to step in. Nehemiah, another good story, when he saw the walls were broken,
Right.
his heart was broken. The key thing is, I think, Bob, that people's heart is not broken enough.
Mm.
I think when we see an issue, we like to say, let's go and tell this to the pastor, or let somebody else do this thing. I think we as a church, our hearts are not breaking. Not all the issues, everybody's heart broken. For some people, it may be the single parents. What a challenge. I heard a story the other day, this guy got married and, God blessed them with a baby. As soon as the baby was on the way, that man just exited the marriage. He said, I don't want the marriage. My heart broke. I have a grandbaby, and I'm just thinking, what would this life be for her, this little girl? Coming into the world without a daddy, knowing a daddy. What a heart. My heart was just kind of, I said, oh my God. My wife was just weeping and said, oh my God. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
I think our hearts are not really breaking. We're such a people that we want to stay in a comfort zone. When we step out of a comfort zone, God will do miracles for us.
Isn't that the most amazing thought that we know, right? Because we have seen God move in ways that you can't even explain, right? You just go, oh, that was God, right? But other people will explain it away or try to explain it away, right? And I think, when we sit back and say, okay, well, how do we engage? How do we get the folks who are maybe just showing up for the first time? Maybe they came in to one of the different areas or ministries, we call them coracles here, but one of the different ways in which they entered in, right? And so now we bandaged them up. They're like the Samaritan. We've had them stay at the hotel for a while. Everything's okay, but now we've come back and we're like, okay, now what are you going to do? What's your turn? Is there anything that you've seen over the course of your ministry that helps you kind of say, okay, how do we move this person from just the bandaged and wounded to the person who then extends their hand and begins to do what you just said, which is, hey, somebody ought to do that. And instead of pointing to someone else, they actually get moving. Is there a tie-in? Is there a certain aspect of that type of person that we should be cultivating as part of their healing or a part of their learning?
I think when we see a problem, when we see an issue, the first thing that comes to our mind, I don't have the resources. Or resources of knowledge, resources of rooms,
Right.
funding, all these things come to us. And that's why I like to focus on this story, such a powerful story. What do you have? 5 loaves and 2 fishes. We talk about that as easily as we can, but the other way Jesus was saying, whatever is in your hand, let me bless it. And I think He's not looking for big things to happen. In our work that I've done overseas and other places that I've seen, even in the United States that I've done, when you get engaged, when you step in, God will also step in with you. But people don't step in. The big miracle that happened to Joshua in the waters of Jordan, he says, you step in the waters. Only when you step, when you see the Levitical priest step in the water, then the waters would separate. I don't think we step in. And I'm hoping and praying that our team would step in and see what God can do. And you and I know the stories. When you step in, you yourself have done great ministry. I mean, recovery ministry has been so. I've known friends that have recovery ministries, other ministries. When they stepped in, God shows up.
So if we were advising that new person who's part of maybe a leadership team or has started to move down their pathway with Jesus, what are the ways in which you think, obviously there's that heart moment, right, which is what I think you're talking about, that moment somebody ought to do something, okay? When you say that, you're actually pointing back to yourself because God has kind of moved you with that. That's the Holy Spirit movement, kind of saying, okay, somebody ought to. What would you then suggest for that person to do next?
Yeah, I mean, let the heart keep just beating on you, reminding you when your heart is beating for that issue, for that problem, God is working in you. And I think the best part would be for us to say, Lord, what do you want me to do? I think that's the first thing that, when your heart is just pounding, and there is no formula of prayer for this.
Right.
All you need to do is say, God, what do you want me to do? And I think that sincere prayer from the heart will begin to engage you. God will begin to show people in your life. He will send another person in your life who says, you know what, the other day I noticed this problem in our community. There's another person that God is sending your way. The little boy had no clue that whoever packed the lunch, we never know the story, okay? But he had this within him.
Right.
God would take that, Bob, that little concern, that care that you have to say, you know what, I want to step in, I want to do something. I want to be a change maker with the little resources. And I believe, and we all believe, that God does miracles for us. Stepping in is the first step to prayer, to say, God, what do you want me to do? That simple prayer can change everything for us.
Is it, I often wonder about that little boy, right? Because I just think of these guys steal his lunch, really. Basically, hey, we're taking your lunch. Right? I know your mom packed that, but we're taking your lunch and we're going to feed 5,000. And he's probably sitting there going, what?
Yeah.
What? And all of a sudden, what returns to him, are bushels of blessings. And I think, for me personally, that's that moment, that little boy going, oh, I don't know about this, and Mom packed this for me, and then having to give up what he thought his day was going to be. Because obviously he packed a meal, he thought something else was happening. He had to give that up. Might have been a little painful, these men, if we can call them that, these older males take his lunch. Okay, I'm kind of stuck here. Okay, they telling me what to do. I do these things. And then there's all this additional food at the end of the day, right? And I think that's so much, it's such a great analogy for you and I and any new believer. Just because he's saying to you, I'm going to take that thing that you have, and you're like, no, this is mine, right? And he says, no. Watch what I'm going to do with it if you'll utilize it for the kingdom. And what you're repaid back, right, is 100-fold, right? And I always remember there was a preacher a while ago who said, what do you want to get in return, right? Do you want the 1 for 1? Do you want the 1 for 10? Or do you want the 100-fold? And I think most people arrogantly say, well, I want the 100-fold. But they don't realize then when it takes it away from you, it's going to be even more of an issue because you have to let go, right? And I think when we're talking about leadership in this way, we encourage people to take this step in, right? To give something up for the ministry. What is that going to look like? Time, talent, resources? We don't know. I mean, God gifts us all a little differently. And then that moment in which we are now walking with Him, okay? And then here at the center, and of course, I know you're on board with this, we say, now, okay, get moving, right? Or get attached to an organization who is doing that thing that is placed upon your heart because you may be the one He is motivating to move into that. And I like to stress that it doesn't actually have to be a Christian ministry to do that. Right? It can be a non-Christian or what we call secular ministry in which then you are becoming yeast in a larger bowl of bread that is going out to feed people or to take care of people, however you want to use that analogy. That to me has always been like that powerful moment because then that is the kingdom expansion. It's not about a building, it's not about inviting somebody to Sunday service, it's more about kingdom expansion and kind of watching God just gently move through these people. How powerful, I can only imagine what that young boy's life was like the rest of his days. I remember when, can you see him sitting there, or the next time he struggled with something. Well, God came through, What a wonderful witness. And I think that for leadership is also kind of a prerequisite, right? You have to have had one of those moments where you like you said, just like Joshua putting his foot into the river, right? You have to have your moment where you give up your lunch, stick your foot out. It has to be that place where God has met you there because it's in that now you can go, whether it's to lead or to assist. either way, our leadership, we need both.
Yes.
All of that expands the kingdom because he works through us, right? And sometimes we don't even know why we're doing, certain things. I had somebody yesterday, coffee with somebody yesterday, and said, and he's, gentleman's telling this long story about he purchased a car, right? He came home and his wife, why did you purchase that car? He goes, I don't know, it was a good deal. I couldn't pass it up. It was way too good of a deal. It was only a couple of $1,000s, and I just figured God was going to let us know. And he said a week later, his son's car, the engine blew up in the car. It was an older car, and he's like, we didn't even skip a beat. We called the people to come take the car away, and my son took the other car. He goes, my wife just looked at me and said, how did you know that would happen? He goes, I didn't.
Yeah.
He goes, but I've come to rely that God provides in ways that I go, well, that's just an incredible opportunity. And I think that's that witness, right? That's the witness in the world. And while that's small in comparison, this gentleman's life, his story leads him to that place where, as a Christian business owner, he's doing something different in his leadership, with his own men, but also at home with his son and his wife. And good reminders.
As you were sharing this, and I remember one word that you said, there was, for the little boy to give up that lunch, there was a pain. Of course there was some pain. I mean, his mom packed it, and he's holding it in his hand, and these big disciples come and they say, whatever they might have said, and we don't know the details of it, but I'm sure whatever the details, minus those details, but somebody taking away from you the thing that you have to fill your stomach, it's going to cause some pain. And I think, we all know this cliche, we say that, no gain without pain. And I think, Bob, so many ministries misunderstood because they think it should be painless.
Yeah.
People really forget that, Paul said, I'll give up everything. I'll give up everything to know him and the power, the resurrection power. I'll give up everything, all that I've earned in my life, the degrees, the name. Philippines talks about that. I want to give up everything to know him. And I think ministry also the same way, that when God calls you, there is a little pain, little uncertainty, little of stepping into the waters, not knowing what's the temperature, if I'm going to make it, what happens if this doesn't happen, what if the water just takes me away. All those fears are natural for us. But I just want to encourage anyone that if you see your heart is broken, step into that. And I think Nehemiah's example, the walls are broken, the city walls are broken, the people are dying and crying, I will step in. And he's not an engineer, he was a cupbearer.
Right.
But he goes to build a wall. This is what we're saying, that when people see an issue and a problem, you don't have to be an expert on that. Step in, God will provide the resources. You see what's a beautiful story, isn't it? Right. He was not a building construction man, he was not a contractor, but he was a cupbearer. What a royal job that is. But when he saw the pain of the people, he stepped into that pain, and God began to provide. And I think, as people, we as a church need to step into the pains of people.
Yeah, and how many people then avoid it, right? And I love that as as a recognition that ministry happens not because you've got the best skills for that or that's the thing you need to do, but because you are being sent to do that. And it might be that it's stirring within one's spirit. It might be because God's saying, no, I'm taking your lunch today. It can be 1,000 different ways in which you enter into that moment. But in that moment, if you trust in the Lord, everything can move forward.
Yeah. I think our people need to see the need. This is the biggest thing, that when you see the need of the people, don't shut the door. I think when great things will happen, when you also feel that need in your heart, that's what we're talking about, pain. Great ministries happen because somebody saw the need. The Salvation Army, William Booth, he saw the need. Story. Yeah. He saw the need, and he says on the people, when he sees the people, my version, he says he saw the people that are drunk, and he says, where can I have such a beautiful opportunity? I mean, anybody? That people are drunk, you think it's an opportunity? Most pastors or most leaders would say, you know, I don't want that kind of people in my church. And literally that happens,
Right.
right? But William Booth saw that and he says, where can I have such a great opportunity? He not only saw the need, but he felt that opportunity, saying, I want to be in that. And he steps into the pain of the people. You know, a lot of people that drink or have whatever addictions they have, they don't have it because they want it, they enjoy it. I think that once they're addicted, it's painful. They want to get out of it. You and I know
Right.
hundreds of stories. We met people. I have a friend who just, you know, lived in that and died with that pain. I don't want, he said. And I know those recovery stories.
Right.
But step into that pain, and what a beautiful opportunity for us to help people to come out of that. So the bottom line is, Jesus wants all of us to engage in something, Bob. As a team, he wants us to get into the game. Whatever game that you feel that God is calling. Not everybody likes NFL, not everybody likes baseball, not everybody likes basketball, but there are so many games. What is your game? What is your team? Where do you see the people struggling in life? Come and step in. Jesus says, you feed them.
That's a great word for today,
Yes.
and a great word for our leadership.
Yes.
All right, until next time, thanks again. We'll do this again soon, I hope.
Yes.
All right.